Now, how long does it take to put a program like this together? I'm assuming a lot longer than most people would think.
Yes, the interesting thing about dance is the timeline is very different than it would be maybe from a musician preparing for a performance or theater groups. We tend to, with dance, take 6 months to a year working on a new performance. Yeah, and this one's a little different because it's a collection of several choreographers who are each offering a piece, as opposed to one choreographer who's creating an entire show. But for me, the timeline is significantly longer because as the producer and production manager, and I also create and perform in the show, I'm handling booking the venue, hiring the technical staff, the marketing, all of those sort of outside pieces to enable the artists that we select each year to focus more carefully on creating their art. And so the project starts for me, probably more than a year out.
Well, I asked you before we got on the air here, which comes first, the music or the concept or the dance? And basically you told me it's always the music, right?
Well, I loved that question, and my response was, for jazz choreographers and people who are inspired by music or driven by vernacular ideas, music is often first, and that isn't necessarily true for a lot of other dance forms, which is part of what sets us apart or makes us different as jazz artists. So I kind of mentioned this idea that oftentimes a choreographer who's interested in jazz, rhythm-driven, and vernacularly inspired dance has a piece of music that they've been really into, or an artist that they're really listening to a lot, and a concept kind of rolling around in the back of their head. And when those two things meet, that's when a piece comes forward. And sometimes, too, it is purely motivated by an interest of bringing visuals to a piece of music.
One question I didn't ask you, but that just occurred to me, is there a difference between dancing to recorded jazz or live jazz?
Oh yeah. And I think I speak for a lot of us, at least in my camp of folks that are interested in connecting back to the history of jazz as information. We all love to work with live music. And so, but it's often a matter of limited time and finance, to be able to collaborate with live musicians. But there's absolutely a difference. And I think the biggest question comes with improvisation, which we have been chatting about too. If you're a jazz choreographer who's interested in improvisation on a stage setting, to be viewed, it's significantly different to improvise to a recording that you're familiar with. Because it's coming, as opposed to working with live musicians where the auditory element is a question.
And we also touched on the idea that for me, jazz dance was Broadway, because that was when we got into it. You were telling me how you got to go to the Newport Jazz Festival, and the artists you mentioned were of the newer variety, pretty far from bebop, Robert Glasper and so forth, and others more, a whole different kind of thing. But you seem to have been very inspired by them.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and what was so exciting about going and seeing that at Newport was the crowd was so diverse, age-wise, race-wise, everything. And it really gave me hope for what does jazz look like right now. We were talking a little bit about how, jazz music and dance have differing definitions. Jazz music had its period of time where it was quote-unquote the popular music of our country and has since garnered its own following. And part of what's keeping it so interesting and alive is its ability to fuse with new ideas, hip-hop sensibilities, Latin ideas. I mean, this has, of course, been happening for a long time. But the same is happening in jazz dance, where we go, I'm coming across all this cool new information as I continue to train and be interested in dance and in the world around me. How can I take that information and let it inform where I head as a choreographer or a musician to keep innovating on rooted ideas to see what the future can look like? I think that's part of the question of defining jazz dance. There's some confusion around what it means. There's a lot of different definitions. Is it just theatrical Broadway dance? I think that's a facet of it. I think hip-hop related styles are a facet of jazz because they come from the same sensibilities in terms of interaction, social sensibility, complicated rhythm, etc. But the ways that people define and categorize things are totally up to them. So you know, in terms of what we see on popular television shows like So You Think You Can Dance, that's certainly a part of the jazz facet. Some people would call that commercial dance. But I think, you know, what we're invested in and showing on our show is that, like you said, you know, is it more internal? What is the purpose of the thing being displayed? And so, rhythmically speaking, we're really trying to offer choreographers who are considering connections to history and vernacular movement, improvisation, connecting to each other, this sense of improvisation and interaction that you see in a jazz ensemble. And so I guess my answer to that is jazz dance is a wide, has deep roots with many branches, and the way that we define it is an individual thing, just like anything else.
Well, that's terrific. Rhythmically speaking dance.
Rhythmically is a complicated word to type. Rhythmically speaking dance.org.
All right, and you'll find out all that. And you can probably just show up at the Southern Theater and get some tickets too.
Yep.
Erin, it's always delightful talking with you. I hope we'll do it again much sooner.
We hope that you can come out if you like jazz music. Come check out Jazz Dance. Thanks for having me on, Ed.
Absolutely. Thanks, Erin. Erin Lienhardt, Rhythmically Speaking, is the group, and it's going to be great.